The charcoal stick broke in Eleanor Norwood's hand, just as she finished sketching the cruel line of Dutch Morgan's mouth, and she cursed under her breath while the afternoon heat pressed through the window of Sheriff Benson's cramped office in Aztec, New Mexico Territory. It was July of 1882, and Eleanor had been drawing wanted posters for nearly 3 years now, ever since her father had died and left her with nothing but his artistic talent and a stubborn determination to make her own way in this unforgiving land. She brushed coal dust from her fingers and reached for another stick, studying the description the sheriff had given her about Morgan's latest robbery in Farmington. "That's damn fine work, Miss Norwood," Sheriff Benson said, leaning over her shoulder to peer at the sketch. His breath smelled of tobacco and coffee, and Eleanor tried not to wrinkle her nose. "You've got a real gift for catching the meanness in a man's eyes." Eleanor nodded, wiping sweat from her brow with the back of her hand. The New Mexico heat was particularly brutal today, making the small room feel like an oven. "Thank you, Sheriff. I should have this finished within the hour, then I can start on the Simmons brothers." The sheriff grunted his approval and returned to his desk, leaving Eleanor to her work. She had just begun shading Morgan's jawline when the door opened with such force that it slammed against the wall, sending a shower of dust motes dancing through the sunlight. Eleanor's hand jerked, leaving an unwanted dark streak across her paper. She looked up, ready to give whoever had entered a piece of her mind, but the words died on her lips. Standing in the doorway was a man who seemed to embody everything wild and dangerous about the frontier. He was tall, well over 6 feet, with shoulders broad enough to block most of the light from outside. His dark hair fell past his collar, and several days' worth of stubble shadowed his jaw. But it was his eyes that caught Eleanor's attention, pale gray like storm clouds, and they were looking directly at her with an intensity that made her heart skip. "Afternoon, Sheriff," the stranger said, his voice a low drawl that seemed to rumble through the small space. He removed his hat, revealing more of that unruly dark hair. "I heard you've got an artist working for you." Sheriff Benson had jumped to his feet, his hand hovering near his pistol. "Quinn Navarro," he said slowly, and Eleanor saw his jaw tighten. "You've got some nerve walking in here." Eleanor's breath caught. Quinn Navarro. The name was familiar because she had sketched his face just 2 months ago. He was wanted for bank robbery, horse theft, and evading capture across 3 territories. The reward on his head was substantial, $500, enough to keep her fed and housed for years if she were careful. "I'm not here for trouble," Quinn said, holding his hands away from the gun belt slung low on his hips. His eyes never left Eleanor's face. "I just want to talk to the lady." "Like hell you do," Sheriff Benson snapped, finally drawing his weapon. "Miss Norwood, step away from him." But Eleanor found herself unable to move. Quinn Navarro looked nothing like the sketch she had drawn from witness descriptions. That drawing had shown a hard man with cruel features and cold eyes. The man standing before her now had laugh lines around his eyes, and a mouth that looked more accustomed to smiling than sneering. There was something almost gentle in the way he looked at her, despite the danger that clung to him like his dusty trail coat. "I saw one of my posters in Durango," Quinn said, still speaking directly to Eleanor as if the sheriff and his aimed pistol did not exist. "It did not look a damn thing like me. No offense to your skills, madam, but I figured if my face is going to be plastered all over the territory, it ought to at least be accurate." The sheer audacity of the request startled a laugh out of Eleanor before she could stop herself. "You want me to draw you? You are aware that you are a wanted man, are you not?" "Very aware," Quinn said, and now he did smile, a slow curve of his lips that transformed his entire face. "But I've got my pride. That poster makes me look like some kind of monster." My own mother would not recognize me from it. Your mother probably should not recognize you, considering you are a criminal, Sheriff Benson interjected, cocking his pistol. Now get your hands up before I put a bullet in you, Navarro. Quinn sighed but complied, raising his hands slowly. Sheriff, I am going to walk out of here the same way I came in. You can shoot me if you want, but I am betting you would rather not do that in front of the lady. Besides, you know as well as I do that every lawman from here to California has tried to catch me, and I am still free as a bird. You arrogant son of a— Wait, Eleanor heard herself say, surprising everyone in the room, including herself. She set down her charcoal and stood, smoothing her skirts with hands that trembled slightly. If he is willing to sit still for a proper portrait, why should we not take advantage of that? We could finally have an accurate poster. It would make it easier to identify him. Sheriff Benson looked at her as if she had lost her mind. Miss Norwood, the man is a dangerous outlaw, who is currently unarmed with your gun pointed at him, Eleanor countered. The idea was insane, she knew that, but something about Quinn Navarro intrigued her. Maybe it was the disconnect between his reputation and his demeanor, or maybe it was simply that she had grown tired of drawing faces from second-hand descriptions. What harm could it do? I will sketch him, you will keep your weapon trained on him the entire time, and then he leaves with his precious accurate poster. Quinn's smile widened. I like her, Sheriff. She has got sense. She has got something, but I am not sure sense is the word, the sheriff muttered. But Eleanor could see him considering it. A truly accurate image of Quinn Navarro would be valuable. Fine. But he sits in that chair, hands visible at all times, and if he so much as twitches wrong, I shoot him. Fair enough, Quinn agreed amiably, lowering his hands and moving to the chair Eleanor indicated. He settled into it with an easy grace, those storm-gray eyes watching her with what looked like amusement. How do you want me? Eleanor felt heat rise to her cheeks that had nothing to do with the summer temperature. She busied herself with gathering fresh paper and charcoal, trying to ignore the way her pulse had quickened. Just sit naturally. Try not to move too much. Yes, madam, Quinn said, and there was something in his voice that made her look up sharply. He was still smiling, but it was softer now, almost tender. Take all the time you need. I am not going anywhere. She began to sketch, her hand moving with practiced ease despite her nervousness. Up close, she could see details she had never been able to capture in her previous drawing. His eyes were not just gray but flecked with darker spots like granite. A small scar cut through his left eyebrow, probably from some long-ago fight. His nose had been broken at least once, giving his face a rugged quality that was somehow appealing rather than off-putting. How long have you been drawing for the sheriff? Quinn asked after several minutes of silence. Eleanor glanced at Sheriff Benson, who nodded slightly, giving her permission to speak. 3 years, since my father passed away. I am sorry for your loss, Quinn said, and he sounded like he meant it. Your father was an artist too. He was a portrait painter. Quite respected in Boston before. She trailed off, not wanting to go into the details of her father's financial ruin and subsequent spiral into drink. Before we came west. Boston is a long way from New Mexico, Quinn observed. So is wherever you are from, Eleanor countered, noting the slight accent in his speech that suggested somewhere farther south, maybe Texas. Quinn chuckled. Fair point. San Antonio originally, left when I was 17. To become an outlaw. The question came out more judgmental than she had intended, but Quinn did not seem offended. To become a lot of things. The outlaw part came later, mostly by accident. Sheriff Benson snorted. You do not accidentally rob banks, Navarro. You do if you are trying to eat and nobody will hire you because of your name, Quinn said, his voice taking on a harder edge. Eleanor looked up from her sketch and saw something dark flash across his face. You do if you are Mexican in a territory that does not take kindly to Mexicans, especially ones who will not bow and scrape. Eleanor had not considered that. She knew prejudice existed in the territory, had seen it herself in the way some people treated anyone who was not white. But she had never thought about how that might drive someone to crime. That is no excuse, Sheriff Benson said, but he sounded less certain than before. No, Quinn agreed. I suppose it is not, but it is a reason. His eyes found Eleanor's again. We all do what we have to do to survive, do we not, Miss Norwood? She understood what he was implying. Drawing wanted posters was not exactly genteel work for a lady, but it paid her bills and kept a roof over her head. Yes, she said quietly. I suppose we do. They fell into silence again, but it was more comfortable now. Eleanor worked steadily, capturing the sharp angle of Quinn's cheekbones, the strong line of his jaw, the way his hair fell across his forehead. She found herself paying more attention to the details than she usually did, wanting to get every line perfect. You are very good at that, Quinn said softly. Drawing, I mean. It is like you are pulling the truth right out of a person. Thank you, Eleanor said, feeling absurdly pleased by the compliment. I have always thought that faces tell stories if you know how to read them. What story does mine tell? Quinn asked. Eleanor studied him for a long moment before answering. Someone who has been hurt. Someone who decided to hurt the world back before it could hurt him again. But also someone who still has kindness in him, buried under all that armor. The room was so quiet she could hear the clock ticking on the sheriff's desk. Quinn stared at her with an expression she could not quite read, something between surprise and wonder. That is quite a story from just a face. It is what I see, Eleanor said simply, returning to her sketch. You see too much, Quinn murmured, but it did not sound like a criticism. It took her nearly an hour to complete the drawing, far longer than she usually spent on a wanted poster. But when she finally set down her charcoal and held up the paper, even Sheriff Benson had to admit it was exceptional work. She had captured Quinn exactly as he was, not the monster from the descriptions, but a real man with complexity in his eyes and a story written in every line of his face. Well, damn, Quinn said softly, standing to get a better look. That is me, actually me. He looked at Eleanor with something like reverence. You have got a real gift, Miss Norwood. Eleanor, she found herself saying. You can call me Eleanor. Eleanor, Quinn repeated as if tasting the name. Pretty name for a pretty lady. Sheriff Benson cleared his throat loudly. All right, Navarro, you have got your portrait. Now get out before I remember I am supposed to arrest you. Quinn turned to the sheriff, sketching a small bow. Much obliged, Sheriff. Then he looked back at Eleanor, and she saw something in his eyes that made her breath catch. I do not suppose you would consider running away with a wanted man, Eleanor, he said it lightly, almost as a joke, but there was a question underneath the words. Eleanor felt her heart hammering in her chest. This was madness. She had known this man for barely 2 hours, and he was a criminal. But there was something about him that called to her, something that made her want to know his whole story, not just what she could see in his face. I barely know you, she said, trying to sound reasonable. True enough, Quinn admitted, but I feel like I have known you for years. Is that crazy? Completely, Eleanor said, but she was smiling. How about this? Quinn said, moving slowly toward the door while keeping his hands visible for the sheriff. I will be at the canyon just north of town tonight around sunset. If you want to know more of my story, come find me. If not, well, at least I will have a decent wanted poster. She is not going to meet you, Navarro, Sheriff Benson said firmly, but Quinn was looking at Eleanor, not the sheriff. I think the lady can make her own choices, Sheriff. He settled his hat back on his head. Sunset, Eleanor. I will wait until the stars come out." And then he was gone, slipping out the door and disappearing into the afternoon crowd with a speed that suggested he had plenty of practice making quick exits. Eleanor stood frozen, the sketch still in her hands, her mind racing. "You are not actually considering meeting him," Sheriff Benson said. It was not a question. Eleanor looked down at the portrait she had drawn. She had captured Quinn's face perfectly, every detail exact. But she realized there was so much more she wanted to know about him, things that could not be found in a face or a list of crimes. "I do not know," she said honestly. The sheriff sighed heavily. "Miss Norwood, Eleanor, I have known you for 3 years now. You are a smart woman, smarter than most men I know, so I am going to trust you to make a smart decision here." "And if my smart decision is to meet him?" Eleanor asked. Sheriff Benson was quiet for a long moment. "Then I would say be careful. Navarro has never been known to hurt innocent people, but he is still a wanted man. And men like that, they cannot stay in one place for long. You would be letting yourself in for a world of heartache." Eleanor nodded slowly. She knew he was right. Meeting Quinn would be foolish, possibly dangerous, and almost certainly lead to nothing but trouble. The sensible thing would be to forget about him, finish her work, and go home to her small rented room above the general store. But she had been sensible her entire life. Sensible when her father drank away their money. Sensible when she had to support them both. Sensible when she came west and took whatever work she could find. For once, just once, she wanted to do something that made no sense at all. The rest of the afternoon passed in a blur. Eleanor finished the Simmons brothers' posters and collected her payment from the sheriff, all while her mind churned with thoughts of Quinn Navarro and his invitation. She went home, heated water for a bath, and tried to convince herself not to go. But even as she washed and changed into her better dress, the one she saved for church on Sundays, she knew she had already made her decision. The sun was beginning its descent toward the horizon when Eleanor slipped out of town, heading north toward the canyon Quinn had mentioned. She knew the place, a deep cut in the red rock about a mile from Aztec where the river had carved through the stone over countless years. It was beautiful in a harsh way, all sharp edges and dramatic shadows, much like the territory itself. She found Quinn sitting on a flat rock near the canyon's edge, his horse grazing nearby. He stood when he saw her approaching, and the smile that spread across his face was so genuine and delighted that Eleanor felt something warm bloom in her chest. "You came," he said, and he sounded almost surprised. "I must be out of my mind," Eleanor replied, but she was smiling too. "Probably," Quinn agreed. He offered her his hand to help her up onto the rock beside him. His palm was calloused and warm, and Eleanor felt a little thrill run through her at the contact. But the best things in life are usually a little bit crazy. They sat side by side, watching the sun paint the sky in shades of orange and pink and deep purple. For a while, neither of them spoke, content to simply exist in the moment. Eleanor found herself acutely aware of Quinn beside her, the warmth of his body, the steady rhythm of his breathing. "Tell me your story," she said finally. "The real one, not the version on the wanted posters." Quinn was quiet for a moment, his eyes fixed on the horizon. When he spoke, his voice was low and thoughtful. "I told you I left San Antonio when I was 17. What I did not tell you was why. My father owned a small ranch, nothing fancy, but it was honest work and we got by. Then some white men decided they wanted our land. They said my father's claim was not legal, even though we had papers going back to when Texas was still part of Mexico. They burned our house, killed our livestock, and beat my father so badly he could not work anymore." Eleanor felt her chest tighten. "That is horrible. It gets worse," Quinn continued. I went to the law, tried to get them to help, but the sheriff was friends with the men who had done it. He told me to take my family and leave or we would all end up dead. So we did. We went to New Mexico territory, thought maybe things would be different, but my father never recovered from that beating. He died about 6 months later. My mother followed him a year after that. I think she just gave up. I am so sorry, Eleanor said softly, placing her hand over his. That must have been unbearable. Quinn looked down at their joined hands. I was angry. So damn angry. I started taking work wherever I could find it, but like I said, not many people wanted to hire someone named Navarro. I got into fights, got a reputation. And then one day I was broke and starving and I saw a bank. The same bank that had refused to give my father a loan when we were trying to rebuild. So I robbed it. Was it wrong? Yeah, probably. But it felt like justice at the time. And I found out I was good at it, being an outlaw. I was fast, I was smart, and I did not get caught. Before I knew it, I had a reputation, and once you have that, it is damn near impossible to go back to being a regular person. Eleanor absorbed this, trying to reconcile the vulnerable young man in his story with the confident outlaw she had met that afternoon. Do you ever regret it? The life you have chosen? Every damn day, Quinn admitted. But what else can I do? There is nowhere I can go where someone is not looking for me. No town where I can settle down and be normal. I am Quinn Navarro, wanted man, until someone faster or luckier catches up with me. That sounds like a lonely way to live, Eleanor said. Quinn turned to look at her, and in the fading light his eyes were soft. It has been. Until today. Eleanor's breath caught. Quinn, you cannot say things like that. Why not? It is the truth. He shifted to face her more fully, his hand still holding hers. From the moment I walked into that office and saw you sitting there, concentrating so hard on that drawing, something just clicked. I have never believed in fate or destiny or any of that, but damn, Eleanor, looking at you felt like coming home. We do not even know each other, Eleanor protested, even as her heart raced. Then let me know you, Quinn said. Tell me about Eleanor Norwood, tell me everything. And somehow she did. Sitting on that rock as the sun disappeared and the stars began to emerge, Eleanor told him about growing up in Boston as the daughter of a respected portrait painter. She told him about the bad investments that had ruined her father, the slow decline into alcoholism, the shame of losing their position in society. She told him about coming west after her father's death, about the strange freedom she had found in being nobody in a place where everyone was trying to reinvent themselves. I have been drawing wanted posters because it is the only work I could find that paid enough to live on, she said. But sometimes I dream about painting real portraits again, the kind my father used to do, beautiful things instead of just criminal faces. You could paint beautiful things, Quinn said. You are talented enough. Talent does not pay the bills, Eleanor said practically. Neither does dreaming. Maybe not, Quinn allowed. But what is the point of surviving if you are not also living? It was the same question Eleanor had been asking herself for years, the same restlessness that had driven her to come here tonight instead of staying safely in her room. I do not know how to do both, she admitted. Then maybe we can figure it out together, Quinn said. Eleanor looked at him, this wanted man with the gentle eyes and the tragic past, and felt something shift inside her. It was terrifying and exhilarating all at once. This is insane. You know that, right? You are a fugitive. I am a respectable woman. There is no possible way this could work. Probably not, Quinn agreed. But do you want to try anyway? The smart answer, the sensible answer was no, but Eleanor had been smart and sensible for too long. Yes, she heard herself say. God help me, yes. Quinn's smile was like sunrise, bright and full of promise. God help us both, he murmured, and then he was leaning in, giving her plenty of time to pull away if she wanted to. She did not want to. His lips were soft against hers, gentle and questioning. Eleanor had been kissed before, awkward fumbling attempts at barn dances and church socials, but nothing like this. This kiss felt like a conversation, like a promise, like the beginning of something that would change everything. She kissed him back, her free hand coming up to rest against his chest, feeling his heartbeat strong and steady beneath her palm. When they finally pulled apart, both slightly breathless, Quinn rested his forehead against hers. "I am going to court you properly," he declared. "Or as properly as an outlaw can court anyone. I am going to make you fall completely in love with me, Eleanor Norwood." "You are very confident," Eleanor said, but she was smiling. "I have to be. I have got a lot of obstacles to overcome." He pulled back just enough to look into her eyes. "But I meant what I said. I want to know you, all of you. And I want you to know me. The real me, not the legend." They stayed at the canyon until the moon rose, talking about everything and nothing. Quinn told her about the places he had been, the incredible beauty of the Western Territories, the freedom of riding with no particular destination. Eleanor told him about her dreams, not just of painting but of maybe having a real home someday, a place that was truly hers. "I have to go back to town," Eleanor said finally, reluctantly. "If I am gone too long, people will talk." "Let them talk," Quinn said, but he stood and helped her down from the rock. "When can I see you again?" "I do not know. It is not exactly easy for you to come into town." "Then you will have to come out here," Quinn said. "Tomorrow night, same time." Eleanor knew she should say no, should put a stop to this before it went any further, but she could not make herself do it. "Tomorrow night," she agreed. Quinn walked her back toward town, staying in the shadows where he was less likely to be spotted. At the edge of town, he caught her hand and pulled her close for another kiss, this one deeper and more intense than the first. When he released her, Eleanor felt dizzy. "Tomorrow," he whispered against her hair. "Tomorrow," she promised. Eleanor floated home in a daze, barely aware of her surroundings. It was only when she was safely in her room that the reality of what she had done hit her. She had kissed a wanted man. She had agreed to see him again. She was courting disaster and she knew it. But for the first time in years, she felt truly alive. The next day passed with agonizing slowness. Eleanor went to the sheriff's office to deliver the finished posters, carefully avoiding his knowing gaze. She bought supplies at the general store, hemmed a dress that needed mending, and tried to act like everything was normal. But inside, she was counting the hours until sunset. When evening finally came, she slipped out of town again, her heart pounding with anticipation and nerves. Quinn was already at the canyon, waiting for her with that smile that made her insides flutter. "You came back," he said, just like he had the night before. "Did you think I would not?" Eleanor asked. "I hoped," Quinn admitted. "But hope and certainty are different things." They settled onto the same rock, and Quinn pulled out a bundle wrapped in cloth. "I brought you something," he said, sounding almost shy. Eleanor unwrapped it carefully and found a set of artist's pencils, good quality ones, much better than the charcoal sticks she usually used. "Quinn, these must have cost a fortune." "Maybe," he said with a shrug, "but you said you wanted to draw beautiful things. Figured you should have decent tools to do it with." Eleanor felt tears prick her eyes. When was the last time someone had given her something just because they wanted to make her happy? "Thank you," she said softly. "You are welcome." Quinn pulled out another package. "And I brought dinner. Nothing fancy, just bread and cheese and some apples, but I thought you might be hungry." They ate as the sun set, talking easily about their days. Quinn had been scouting the area, looking for the safest routes through the territory. Eleanor had finished 3 more wanted posters, none of which, she was careful to note, were for him. "The sheriff is talking about putting together a posse to go after the Dalton gang," Eleanor mentioned. "They robbed the train near Durango last week." Quinn nodded. "I heard about that. Messy job, too much gunfire. Someone is going to get killed if they keep operating like that." "You sound like you disapprove," Eleanor said, slightly amused. "I do," Quinn said seriously. "There is a difference between robbery and murder. I have stolen plenty, but I have never killed anyone. Some of these new outlaws, they are just violent for the sake of it. Gives the rest of us a bad name." Eleanor raised an eyebrow. "The rest of you have a pretty bad name anyway." "Fair point," Quinn conceded with a grin. As the stars emerged, Quinn lay back on the rock, pulling Eleanor down beside him. She rested her head on his shoulder, marveling at how natural it felt. Above them, the sky was a carpet of stars, more than she had ever seen in Boston. "Tell me about your dreams," Quinn said softly. "The ones you have not told anyone else." Eleanor was quiet for a moment, gathering her thoughts. "I want a studio," she said finally. "A real one with big windows and good light. I want to paint portraits of regular people, families and children and couples in love. I want to capture happy moments, not just criminal faces, and I want—" She hesitated. "What?" Quinn prompted gently. "I want a family of my own someday. A husband who loves me, children, a home. I know it is ordinary, but after years of instability, ordinary sounds like heaven." Quinn's arm tightened around her. "That is not ordinary. That is everything." He was quiet for a long moment before speaking again. "What if I told you I wanted the same thing?" Eleanor lifted her head to look at him. "You? Why is that so surprising? You think outlaws do not want homes and families?" "I think outlaws do not usually have the luxury of settling down," Eleanor said carefully. "No," Quinn agreed. "We do not. But that does not mean we do not want it." He sat up, taking both her hands in his. "Eleanor, I know this is crazy. I know we have only known each other for 2 days. But I have never felt like this about anyone. You make me want to be better, to find a way out of this life." "Quinn, there might not be a way out," Eleanor said, her heart aching. "The law does not just forgive and forget, I know. But maybe, just maybe, we could find somewhere far enough away, somewhere they are not looking for me. We could start over." "We," Eleanor whispered. "We," Quinn confirmed. "If you will have me. I know I am not exactly a prize. I am wanted in 3 territories. I have about $50 to my name, and I am probably going to get shot or hanged eventually. But I love you, Eleanor Norwood. I have loved you since you looked up from that sketch and actually saw me, not just the outlaw but the person underneath. And if there is any chance you might love me too, I want to take it." Eleanor's mind was reeling. This was too fast, too much. But looking into Quinn's eyes, she saw nothing but sincerity and hope, and something that made her heart soar. "I think I might be falling in love with you," she admitted, "which is either the bravest or stupidest thing I have ever done." "Probably both," Quinn said. And then he was kissing her again, and Eleanor stopped thinking about the impossibility of it all and just felt. They met every evening for the next 2 weeks, always at the canyon as the sun set. Sometimes they talked for hours, learning everything about each other. Sometimes they simply sat in comfortable silence, enjoying each other's presence. And sometimes they kissed until Eleanor felt dizzy and breathless and more alive than she had ever felt. Quinn told her stories about his travels, about the incredible places he had seen, and the people he had met. Eleanor brought her new pencils and sketched him in different poses, creating a series of portraits that showed not the wanted criminal, but the man she was falling in love with. The man who brought her wildflowers he picked along the trail. The man who listened intently to her stories about her childhood. The man who made her laugh with his wry observations about life, but their idyll could not last forever. Eleanor should have known that. It was a Tuesday afternoon when everything changed. Eleanor was at the sheriff's office, working on a new poster, when Sheriff Benson came in with a telegram in his hand and a grim expression on his face. "They are bringing in federal marshals," he said without preamble. "Seems someone important wants Quinn Navarro caught and they are sending a team to hunt him down." Eleanor's blood ran cold. "When?" "They will be here by the end of the week." The sheriff looked at her steadily. "I am not a fool, Miss Norwood. I have noticed you leaving town every evening. I have noticed the way you look lately, like a woman in love, and I have noticed you have been sketching things other than wanted men." Eleanor's hand went protectively to the pocket where she kept her latest drawing of Quinn. "Sheriff, I do not want to know," he interrupted. "What you do on your own time is your business, but I am giving you fair warning. When those marshals get here, they are going to tear this territory apart looking for Navarro. If you care about him at all, you need to tell him to run, far and fast." Eleanor nodded, her throat tight. "Thank you, Sheriff. Do not thank me. I am still going to have to help them look for him. It is my job, but I figure even wanted men deserve a fair chance." He paused. "You are a good woman, Eleanor. I hope you know what you are doing." "So do I," Eleanor whispered. That evening she ran to the canyon, her skirts hiked up to move faster. Quinn was already there, but his smile faded when he saw her expression. "What is wrong?" he asked, immediately alert. Eleanor told him everything, the words tumbling out in a rush. Quinn listened quietly, his face growing more serious with each sentence. "Federal marshals," he said when she finished. "That is bad. They do not give up like regular lawmen." "You have to leave," Eleanor said urgently. "Tonight, go as far as you can, and leave you behind." Quinn shook his head. "Not a chance. Quinn, they will catch you, they will hang you, then I will go down fighting." He cupped her face in his hands. "But I am not leaving you, Eleanor. I love you too much for that." "Then I will come with you," Eleanor said, the decision forming even as she spoke the words. "We will run together." Quinn's eyes widened. "Eleanor, no, you would be giving up everything. Your home, your work, your reputation." "What home? A rented room above a store. What work?" "Drawing wanted posters for men I do not care about. As for my reputation, I stopped caring about that when I fell in love with an outlaw." She gripped his shirt, pulling him closer. "I am not losing you, Quinn, not when I just found you. Do you understand what you are saying? If you come with me, you will be a fugitive too. You will be running for the rest of your life." "Then I will run," Eleanor said firmly. "As long as I am running with you." Quinn searched her face, looking for doubt or hesitation. Whatever he saw there must have satisfied him because he pulled her into a fierce embrace. "Are you sure? Absolutely sure?" "I have never been more sure of anything," Eleanor said against his chest. "Then we leave tonight," Quinn decided. "Pack whatever you can carry, only the essentials. We will head south into Arizona territory, then maybe west to California. I have got some money saved, enough to get us started somewhere new." Eleanor nodded, her mind already racing through what she needed to do. "I will meet you here in 2 hours." 2 hours, Quinn agreed. He kissed her hard and fast. "I love you, Eleanor Norwood." "I love you too," Eleanor said. "Now go get ready, we have a long ride ahead of us." Eleanor hurried back to town, her mind cataloging what she needed to take. Clothes, her art supplies, the small amount of money she had saved, her mother's locket. Everything else could be left behind. She was packing frantically when someone knocked on her door. "Miss Norwood, it is Sheriff Benson." Eleanor's heart sank, but she opened the door. The sheriff stood there, his hat in his hands, looking uncomfortable. "I am not here to stop you," he said quickly. "I can see you are packing. I just came to give you this." He held out a small leather pouch. "It is the money I owe you for the last batch of posters, plus a little extra. Consider it payment for future work you will not be doing." Eleanor took the pouch, tears stinging her eyes. "Thank you, Sheriff. And this." He handed her a folded paper. "It is a letter. If you ever get settled somewhere, send word. Let me know you are all right." "I will not tell anyone, you have my word." "Why are you helping me?" Eleanor asked. Sheriff Benson smiled sadly. "Because I was young once too. Because I know what it is like to love someone everyone says you should not. And because you are a good woman who deserves to be happy, even if it is with a wanted man." He settled his hat back on his head. "Take care of yourself, Miss Norwood, and tell Navarro if he does not treat you right, he will have me to answer to." Eleanor impulsively hugged him. "Thank you for everything." "Go on now," the sheriff said gruffly, "before I change my mind." Eleanor finished packing, taking one last look around the room that had been her home for 3 years. Then she slipped out into the night, heading for the canyon and the man she loved and the uncertain future that awaited them both. Quinn was ready when she arrived, his horse saddled and a second mount waiting beside it. "I borrowed her," he said, nodding at the mare. "I will send payment to the owner once we are settled." Eleanor tied her bag to the saddle and mounted up. Her experience with horses was limited, but she had learned to ride during her years in New Mexico. "I am ready." Quinn rode close and took her hand, squeezing it gently. "Last chance to change your mind." "Not a chance," Eleanor said firmly. They rode south through the night, putting as much distance as possible between themselves and Aztec. The landscape was harsh and beautiful in the moonlight, all shadows and silver light. Eleanor was sore and tired, but she had never felt more awake, more present in her own life. As dawn broke over the eastern horizon, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink, they stopped to rest the horses and eat some of the provisions Quinn had packed. Eleanor stood on a small rise, looking back the way they had come, saying a silent goodbye to the life she was leaving behind. Quinn came to stand beside her, slipping his arm around her waist. "Any regrets?" Eleanor leaned into him, breathing in the scent of leather and sage and something uniquely Quinn. "None. You?" "Only that I did not meet you years ago," Quinn said. He turned her to face him, his expression serious. "I am going to spend the rest of my life making sure you never regret this choice, Eleanor. I promise you that." "I am going to hold you to that promise," Eleanor said, rising on her toes to kiss him. They rode for weeks, always staying off the main roads, avoiding towns where Quinn might be recognized. They slept under the stars, lived on whatever game Quinn could shoot, and whatever supplies they could buy from isolated ranches. It was hard and often uncomfortable, but Eleanor found a strange joy in the simplicity of it. No more worrying about maintaining appearances or making rent. Just her and Quinn and the wide open sky. They crossed into Arizona territory and kept going, heading west toward California. Along the way, Quinn taught Eleanor to shoot, insisting she needed to be able to protect herself. Eleanor taught Quinn about art, showing him how to really see the world around them, to notice the play of light and shadow, the way colors shifted with the time of day. "You make everything beautiful," Quinn said one evening as they made camp near a small stream. "Even this hard life we are living." "It is beautiful," Eleanor said, sketching the mountains in the distance, "because I am living it with you." They had been traveling for nearly 2 months when they reached a small valley in California, not far from the coast. It was beautiful, with rolling hills covered in golden grass and oak trees, a clear stream running through the center. And it was remote, far from any major towns or well-traveled roads. "What do you think?" Quinn asked as they looked out over the valley. "Could you be happy here?" Eleanor could already picture it. A small house, maybe a garden, a studio where she could paint, a place to call home. "Yes," she said. "I could be very happy here." They spent the next several months building their life in that valley. Quinn constructed a small but sturdy cabin using timber from the surrounding hills. Eleanor planted a garden, coaxing vegetables from the California soil. They bought supplies from a town 20 miles away, far enough that no one asked too many questions about the couple living in the isolated valley. Quinn let his hair and beard grow, changing his appearance enough that casual observers would not connect him to the wanted posters still circulating in other territories. Eleanor never sketched another criminal. Instead, she painted the valley, the mountains, the sky at sunset. She painted Quinn, over and over, capturing the peace that had settled over him now that they had stopped running. It was during their first winter in the valley that Quinn rode to town and came back with a preacher. The old man asked no questions, just performed a simple ceremony as the sun set over the hills. Quinn had no ring to give Eleanor, so he carved one from oak wood, smooth and perfect. "I, Quinn Navarro, take you, Eleanor Norwood, to be my wife," he said, his voice steady and sure. "I promise to love you, protect you, and make you happy for as long as I live." Eleanor felt tears streaming down her cheeks as she repeated her own vows. "I, Eleanor Norwood, take you, Quinn Navarro, to be my husband. I promise to love you, stand by you, and build a life with you, no matter what challenges come." The preacher pronounced them married, accepted the payment Quinn offered, and rode away into the gathering darkness. Quinn pulled Eleanor into his arms, kissing her thoroughly. "Mrs. Navarro," he murmured against her lips. "Mrs. Navarro," Eleanor repeated, testing out the name. She liked the sound of it. "Though I suppose I should be Mrs. Eleanor Navarro now," Quinn laughed. "I suppose you should. Come on, wife, let us go home." Their cabin was small but cozy, with a fireplace Quinn had built himself and windows that let in plenty of light for Eleanor's painting. That night, as they lay together in their bed, Eleanor felt a contentment she had never known existed. This was what she had been searching for all along: a home, a partner, a place where she belonged. The seasons passed in gentle rhythm. Spring brought wildflowers that carpeted the valley in brilliant colors. Summer was warm and golden, perfect for working outside. Fall painted the oak trees in shades of amber and rust. Winter was mild, with just enough rain to keep everything green. Eleanor discovered she was pregnant during their second spring in the valley. She told Quinn one evening as they sat on the porch, watching the sunset. "A baby." Quinn's voice was full of wonder. He placed his hand gently on her still flat stomach. "Are you sure?" "Quite sure," Eleanor said, smiling at his expression. Quinn pulled her close, burying his face in her hair. "I am going to be a father," he whispered. "God, Eleanor, I never thought I would have this. A wife, a child, a home. I do not deserve any of it." "Yes, you do," Eleanor said firmly. "You deserve all the happiness in the world, Quinn Navarro." Their son was born on a crisp October morning, with Eleanor attended by a midwife from the distant town. He came into the world screaming his outrage at the injustice of being born, and Quinn held him with shaking hands, tears streaming down his face. "He is perfect," Quinn said hoarsely. "Absolutely perfect." They named him Thomas, after Eleanor's father, with the middle name James for Quinn's father. Little Thomas had Eleanor's dark hair and Quinn's gray eyes, and from the beginning, he had both his parents wrapped around his tiny finger. Quinn proved to be a devoted father, patient and gentle with his son. Eleanor painted portraits of them together, Quinn holding the baby, Quinn teaching Thomas to walk, Quinn reading to the boy from the few books they owned. She captured every precious moment, knowing how fragile happiness could be. Thomas was 3 when the past caught up with them. Eleanor had just put the boy down for his afternoon nap when she heard horses approaching. She looked out the window and felt her blood run cold. 3 men in dusters, riding with purpose. Lawmen. "Quinn," she called, trying to keep her voice steady. Quinn came in from the barn, saw her face, and immediately understood. "Take Thomas and go to the root cellar," he said quietly. "Stay there no matter what you hear." "I am not leaving you," Eleanor said. "Please," Quinn said urgently. "For our son. Keep him safe." Eleanor wanted to argue, but she could already hear the riders getting closer. She scooped up Thomas, who had woken at the commotion, and ran to the root cellar behind the house. She pulled the door shut just as she heard the horses enter their yard. Through a crack in the boards, she could see Quinn standing in front of their cabin, his hands visible and empty. 3 federal marshals dismounted, their badges glinting in the afternoon sun. "Quinn Navarro," the lead marshal called. "You are under arrest for bank robbery, horse theft, and evading federal custody." "I figured you would catch up to me eventually," Quinn said calmly. "But I am not the same man I was 5 years ago. I have got a family now, a wife and a son. We are not hurting anyone out here." "The law does not care about that," the marshal said. "You committed crimes and you have got to pay for them." Eleanor held Thomas tight, her heart pounding so hard she thought it might break her ribs. She wanted to run out there, to throw herself between Quinn and the marshals, but she knew it would only make things worse. "Can I at least say goodbye to my family?" Quinn asked. The marshal hesitated, then nodded. "Make it quick." Quinn walked slowly to the root cellar, kneeling down by the door. "Eleanor," he called softly, "I need you to be brave now." Eleanor pushed open the door, keeping Thomas behind her. "Quinn, they cannot take you." "They can and they will," Quinn said gently. He cupped her face in his hands, looking at her with such love it made her chest ache. "Listen to me. Go to Sheriff Benson in Aztec. He will help you. Tell him what happened. Tell him I am sorry for all the trouble I caused. He will make sure you and Thomas are taken care of." "I do not want to be taken care of," Eleanor said, tears streaming down her face. "I want you, I need you." "I know, my love, I know." Quinn kissed her forehead, her cheeks, her lips. "But our son needs you more. You have to be strong for him." Little Thomas began to cry, sensing his mother's distress. Quinn picked him up, holding him close. "You be a good boy for your mama, Thomas. You take care of her, all right. And when you are older, she will tell you all about your papa. She will tell you that he was not a perfect man, but he loved you and your mama more than anything in the world." "Quinn, please," Eleanor sobbed. "I love you," Quinn said fiercely. "I will always love you. You gave me the best years of my life, Eleanor. You made me believe I could be more than just an outlaw. That is a gift I can never repay." The lead marshal called out, impatient. "Time is up, Navarro." Quinn kissed Thomas one last time and handed him back to Eleanor. Then he kissed her, long and deep, pouring all his love and regret and hope into that one kiss. "Be happy," he whispered against her lips. "Promise me you will find a way to be happy." Eleanor could not speak, could only nod as tears blurred her vision. Quinn stood and walked back to the marshals. They bound his hands and put him on a horse. He looked back one last time, his eyes finding Eleanor's across the distance. And then they were gone, riding away with the man she loved, leaving Eleanor alone with her son and a heart that felt shattered into 1,000 pieces. For a long time, Eleanor just stood there holding Thomas as he cried, unable to process what had just happened. Then, mechanically, she went inside and began to pack. She could not stay here, not in this valley that was supposed to be their forever home. Every corner held memories of Quinn, and those memories would destroy her if she stayed. She packed their essentials, loaded them onto the wagon Quinn had built, and began the long journey back to New Mexico. Thomas cried for his papa the whole first day, and Eleanor cried with him, her tears soaking into his dark hair. Sheriff Benson was older and grayer when Eleanor walked into his office in Aztec 3 weeks later, but he recognized her immediately. His face crumpled with sympathy when he saw her red eyes and exhausted expression. "I heard they caught him," he said quietly. "I am sorry, Eleanor." "He told me to come to you," Eleanor said, her voice flat and empty. "He said you would help." "Of course I will help," Sheriff Benson said immediately. He came around his desk and guided her to a chair. "What do you need?" What she needed was her husband back, but that was impossible. "A place to stay. Work if there is any. I have a son to support now." The sheriff looked at the little boy in her arms, seeing Quinn's eyes in that small face. "I will help you," he promised. "There is a house on the edge of town, small but decent. The owner passed away and left no heirs. I am sure we can work something out. And there is always work for an artist as skilled as you." Eleanor nodded numbly. The sheriff was as good as his word. Within a week, she and Thomas were settled in the small house, and Eleanor was once again drawing wanted posters for the sheriff's office. It felt like going backward, returning to the life she had left behind, but what choice did she have? She had a child to feed. The trial was held in Santa Fe 6 months later. Eleanor could not afford to attend, but the sheriff kept her informed. Quinn was found guilty on all charges. The sentence was 20 years in the territorial prison. 20 years. Eleanor did her math. Quinn was 26 now. He would be 46 when he got out. Thomas would be grown. Their life together would be over before it had really begun. She painted her grief, channeling it into portraits of the valley, of their cabin, of Quinn as she wanted to remember him. Strong and healthy and happy, not shackled and imprisoned. She painted him holding Thomas, even though they would have no new memories together for 2 decades. These paintings she kept hidden, too precious and too painful to share with anyone. Thomas grew, and Eleanor told him stories about his father. Not the outlaw stories, but the true ones. How brave Quinn had been, how kind, how he had loved his family more than his own freedom. Thomas listened with wide gray eyes, holding tight to the image of the father he barely remembered. The years passed slowly. Eleanor kept drawing wanted posters, kept painting in her spare time. She sold a few pieces here and there, small landscapes and portraits of townsfolk, building a modest reputation. She never remarried, never even considered it. Her heart belonged to Quinn, and no amount of time would change that. When Thomas was 10, Eleanor began saving money with fierce determination. She had a goal now. When Quinn was released, she wanted to have enough to start over again, to build a new life together. She took on extra work, painting signs for businesses, teaching art lessons to the children of wealthier families. Every spare penny went into a jar she kept hidden under a loose floorboard. Thomas was 12 when the letter came. Eleanor's hands shook as she read the brief, formal message from the territorial prison. Quinn Navarro, prisoner number 473, had been injured in a mining accident at the prison. He was alive but unwell. Family could visit if they wished. Eleanor did not hesitate. She arranged for Thomas to stay with the sheriff's wife, used some of her carefully saved money for the journey, and took the next stage to Santa Fe. The prison was a grim stone building that seemed to radiate despair. Eleanor had to wait for hours before she was allowed to see Quinn, escorted by a guard through corridors that smelled of unwashed bodies and hopelessness. Finally, she was shown into a small room with a table and 2 chairs. The man who walked in barely resembled the Quinn she had loved. He was thinner, with new scars on his face and hands. His hair had gray streaks that had not been there before, and he moved with a slight limp. But when he saw her, his eyes lit up with the same love she remembered. "Eleanor," he breathed, and his voice broke on her name. She wanted to run to him, to throw herself into his arms, but the guard remained in the room, watching. So she simply sat down, reaching across the table to take his shackled hands in hers. "You came," Quinn said, tears streaming down his weathered face. "I did not think you would come." "Of course I came," Eleanor said, her own tears falling freely. "You are my husband. I love you." "I love you too," Quinn said. "I have thought about you every single day. You and Thomas, how is he? Is he all right?" Eleanor told him everything about their son. How smart he was, how kind, how he looked more like Quinn with every passing year. She told him about their life in Aztec, about her work, about the money she was saving for when he was released. "You should not wait for me," Quinn said, his voice rough. "You should find someone else, someone who can give you and Thomas a proper life." "There is no one else," Eleanor said firmly. "There has never been anyone else, and there never will be. You are it for me, Quinn Navarro. 20 years, 40 years, it does not matter. I will wait." Quinn brought her hands to his lips, kissing her knuckles. "I do not deserve you." "Then spend the rest of your life trying to," Eleanor said. "Come home to us, Quinn. We need you." They talked until the guards said their time was up. Eleanor stood reluctantly, memorizing every detail of Quinn's face, trying to carry enough of him to last until she could visit again. "I will come back," she promised, "as often as I can, and I will bring Thomas next time." "Thank you," Quinn said, "for not giving up on me, for still loving me even after everything." "I will always love you," Eleanor said. "Always." She visited 3 more times over the next years, bringing Thomas with her. The boy was shy at first, uncertain around this stranger who was his father, but Quinn was patient and gentle, and gradually they built a relationship through brief conversations and letters that Eleanor wrote on Thomas's behalf. When Thomas was 16, Eleanor got another letter from the prison. Quinn had been recommended for early release due to good behavior. If approved, he could be free within the year. Eleanor read the letter 3 times, afraid to believe it. Could it really be possible? Could Quinn really be coming home? She threw herself into preparations, working harder than ever to add to their savings. She bought lumber and hired men to expand their small house, adding a proper bedroom and a studio space. She wanted everything to be perfect when Quinn came home. The day finally arrived on a bright morning in May of 1901. Eleanor and Thomas, now a lanky 17-year-old, waited at the stage depot, their nerves stretched tight. And then the stage rolled in, and Quinn stepped out into the sunshine. He was 44 now, his hair more gray than dark, his face lined with years of hard labor and harder lessons. But when he saw Eleanor, his smile was the same one she had fallen in love with 19 years ago. "Eleanor," he said, and then she was in his arms, holding him tight, feeling his heart beat against hers. "Welcome home," she whispered. Quinn pulled back just enough to look at Thomas, who stood nervously to the side. "My God," he said hoarsely, "you are so tall. You are a man now." "Papa," Thomas said, and then father and son were embracing, both of them crying. They walked home together, Quinn between Eleanor and Thomas, looking around Aztec with wonder. "It has changed," he said. "The whole world has changed." "Not everything," Eleanor said, squeezing his hand. "Some things stay the same." The transition was not always easy. Quinn had nightmares about the prison, times when he would wake up screaming, disoriented and terrified. Eleanor would hold him through those dark moments, whispering reassurances until he remembered where he was, that he was safe, that he was home. Thomas was patient with his father, helping him adjust to life outside prison walls. They worked together on projects around the house, building a new barn, fixing the fence. Slowly, Quinn began to relax, to believe that this was real, that his life was truly his own again. Eleanor set up her studio in the new addition to the house, and Quinn would sit for hours watching her paint, marveling at the skill in her hands. She painted a new portrait of him, capturing the man he was now. Older, scarred, but still the person she loved more than anything. One evening, as they sat on their porch watching the sunset, Quinn turned to Eleanor. "I wasted so much of our life," he said quietly. "So many years we could have had together, gone because of my mistakes." "No," Eleanor said firmly. "Do not think of it that way. Yes, we lost years. But look at what we still have. We have each other. We have Thomas. We have this home, this life. That is more than many people ever get." Quinn pulled her close, kissing the top of her head. "How did I get so lucky to find you?" "The same way I got lucky to find you," Eleanor said. "We were both exactly where we needed to be at exactly the right moment." Thomas left for college the following year, heading to Albuquerque to study engineering. Quinn and Eleanor were alone for the first time in nearly 2 decades, and they made the most of it. They took trips to see the places Quinn had been during his outlaw days, reclaiming those memories and making new ones. They worked together in the garden Eleanor had planted. They talked for hours about everything and nothing. Quinn found work as a carpenter, his skills from building their cabin in California serving him well. He was good with his hands, patient and precise, and soon he had more commissions than he could handle. He built furniture, repaired houses, and even helped construct the new church on the edge of town. Eleanor's portrait painting flourished. Word spread about her talent, and people came from all over the territory to have their likenesses captured. She painted families, children, couples in love, all the happy moments she had dreamed of painting years ago. And every spare moment she painted Quinn, building a gallery of the man she loved in all his moods and moments. On their 20th wedding anniversary, Quinn surprised Eleanor with a ring, a proper one this time, with a small diamond he had saved for months to buy. "I know I gave you a wooden one all those years ago," he said as he slipped it onto her finger. "But you deserve the real thing." Eleanor looked at the ring, glittering on her hand, then at the wooden band she had worn for 2 decades. "I love them both," she said. "The wooden one because it was made with your hands and given with your whole heart. This one because it shows me you are still thinking of ways to make me happy." "Always," Quinn promised. "For the rest of my life." Thomas came home from college with a degree and a sweetheart, a smart young woman named Sarah who fell in love with Eleanor and Quinn immediately. They were married in 1905, and Eleanor painted their wedding portrait, capturing the joy on their faces as they stood together, ready to start their life. When Thomas and Sarah's first child was born in 1906, a daughter they named Eleanor Rose, Quinn held his granddaughter with tears streaming down his face. "I never thought I would live to see this," he said. "A grandchild, family beyond just you and Thomas." Eleanor watched him with the baby and felt her heart overflow. This was what they had fought for, what they had sacrificed for. This moment, this family, this love. The years continued to pass, bringing more grandchildren, more joy. Quinn's past faded into just that, the past, something that had happened but no longer defined him. He was known now as Quinn Navarro the carpenter, the grandfather, the devoted husband. The wanted posters had long since been taken down, the crimes pardoned by time and good behavior. On a warm evening in the spring of 1912, 30 years after Eleanor had first walked into Sheriff Benson's office and met a wanted man asking for his portrait, she and Quinn sat on their porch watching the sunset. They were older now, Quinn's hair completely white, Eleanor's hands beginning to shake with age when she painted. But their love was as strong as ever, perhaps stronger for having survived so much. "You ever regret it?" Quinn asked, the question he had asked so many times over the years. "Giving up your safe life to run away with an outlaw," Eleanor smiled, the same answer she always gave. "Not for one single second. You gave me everything I ever wanted, Quinn. Love, family, a home, a purpose. What is there to regret? Quinn took her hand, their fingers intertwining as naturally as breathing. I love you, Eleanor Navarro. I have loved you since the moment you looked up from that sketch and saw the real me, and I will love you until my last breath and beyond. I love you too, Eleanor said, always and forever. They sat together as the sun painted the sky in brilliant colors. Two people who had found each other against all odds and built a love that had survived everything the world had thrown at them. An artist and an outlaw, a woman who sketched wanted posters and a man who had asked for his portrait, finding in each other everything they had ever needed. The sunset faded to twilight, and still they sat, hands joined, hearts beating in unison, proof that love could indeed conquer all. Years continued to flow like a gentle river, bringing new seasons and new joys. Thomas and Sarah gave Eleanor and Quinn 5 more grandchildren, each one a blessing that made their hearts swell with gratitude. The small house in Aztec expanded again and again, rooms added to accommodate family gatherings that grew larger with each passing year. Sheriff Benson, now retired and ancient, would sometimes visit them on the porch, shaking his head in wonder. Never thought I would see the day when Quinn Navarro was the most respectable citizen in town, he would say, chuckling. Life is strange. Life is good, Quinn would correct him, looking at Eleanor with eyes that still held the same love they had 30 years before. Eleanor's hands grew too shaky for detailed portrait work when she reached her 60s, but she adapted, developing a looser style that somehow captured even more emotion than her precise earlier work. People said her paintings had soul, that you could feel the love in every brushstroke. She knew the secret. She painted everything through the lens of the love she had found, the love that had transformed her entire life. Quinn's carpentry slowed as well, his joints stiffening with age, but he still made toys for the grandchildren, rocking horses and dollhouses and wooden trains. Each piece was crafted with the same care he had put into carving Eleanor's first wedding ring, with the same love he brought to everything he did for his family. On quiet evenings when the grandchildren had gone home and the house was peaceful, Eleanor and Quinn would sit together in her studio. She would sketch while he whittled, comfortable in the silence that came from decades of knowing each other completely. Sometimes they would talk about the past, about their wild escape into the night, about the years they had lost and the years they had gained. Do you think we would have been happy if none of the bad stuff had happened? Quinn asked once. If I had never been an outlaw, if we had just met normal like in some normal town, Eleanor considered this carefully. Maybe, she said. But I think the struggles made us appreciate what we have more. We did not take anything for granted because we knew how easily it could all be lost. Quinn nodded slowly. You are probably right. You usually are, Eleanor laughed, the sound warm and familiar. Not always. But I was right about you. I knew from that very first day that you were worth the risk. Best gamble you ever took? Quinn asked with a smile. Best gamble I ever took, Eleanor confirmed. In 1919, they celebrated their 38th wedding anniversary surrounded by their family. Thomas, now 40, gave a toast that brought tears to everyone's eyes. My parents taught me that love is not just a feeling, it is a choice. They chose each other every single day, through good times and terrible times, through separation and reunion. They showed me that real love is worth fighting for, worth waiting for, worth everything. Sarah added her own words. And they taught me that it is never too late to start over, to build something beautiful from broken pieces. Thank you, Eleanor and Quinn, for showing us what true love looks like. The grandchildren, ranging from toddlers to teenagers, clustered around Eleanor and Quinn, their faces shining with affection. This was their legacy, Eleanor thought. Not the wanted posters she had drawn or the crimes Quinn had committed, but this. A family built on love and forgiveness and second chances. As they lay in bed that night, Quinn pulled Eleanor close, her head resting on his shoulder just as it had for nearly 4 decades. "We did all right, did we not?" he murmured into the darkness. "We did better than all right," Eleanor said. "We did wonderfully." They fell asleep that way, wrapped in each other's arms, 2 hearts still beating as one after all these years. The 1920s brought changes to Aztec and to the world. Automobiles became common, electricity reached even their small town, and the world felt simultaneously larger and smaller. But in their home, some things remained constant. Quinn still brought Eleanor wildflowers from their garden every Sunday. Eleanor still painted portraits of Quinn, her subject matter never growing old. They still sat on their porch at sunset, hands joined, watching the sky paint itself in brilliant colors. When Eleanor turned 70 in 1924, the town threw her a celebration. People came from all over, bringing portraits she had painted over the decades. There were wedding portraits and family portraits, portraits of children who were now grandparents themselves. The walls of the town hall were covered with her work, a testament to the lives she had captured, the moments she had preserved. "You have given this town its memory," the mayor said in his speech. "Every family has a piece of your art, a piece of your heart. You have shown us how to see the beauty in ordinary life." Quinn stood beside Eleanor, his arm around her waist, pride shining in his eyes. "That is my girl," he whispered. "I always knew you were special." Eleanor leaned into him, grateful beyond words for this man who had believed in her talent when she was just drawing wanted posters, who had encouraged her to dream bigger, to reach higher. He had been her muse, her supporter, her greatest love. Quinn's health began to fail in 1926. It started with a persistent cough that would not go away, then breathlessness that made even simple tasks difficult. The doctor diagnosed weak lungs, damage from years of working in the prison mines. There was nothing to be done but make him comfortable. Eleanor nursed him with fierce devotion, rarely leaving his side. She set up her easel beside his bed and painted while he rested, wanting to capture every remaining moment. Thomas and Sarah visited daily with the grandchildren, and Quinn held court from his bed, telling stories and dispensing wisdom with the patience of someone who knew his time was limited. "Do not cry for me," he told Eleanor one evening as she sat beside him, holding his hand. "I have had a longer, happier life than I ever deserved. I got 44 years with you. That is 44 more than I would have had if you had not taken a chance on a foolish outlaw." "You were never foolish," Eleanor said through her tears. "You were brave and honest and true. You were everything good." Quinn smiled, that same gentle smile that had stolen her heart so many years ago. "You made me good, Eleanor. You saw something in me worth saving and you loved it into existence. Everything good in my life came from you. We saved each other," Eleanor insisted. "I was just existing before I met you. You taught me how to live." They talked through the night, revisiting their favorite memories. The first time they had kissed at the canyon, the journey to California, the birth of Thomas, building their cabin, Quinn's release from prison. The grandchildren, all 12 of them, each one precious and unique. "No regrets?" Quinn asked as dawn light began to filter through the window. "No regrets," Eleanor confirmed. "Only gratitude for every moment we had together." Quinn squeezed her hand weakly. "Promise me something. Promise me you will keep painting, keep capturing beauty, keep living fully. Do not stop just because I am gone." "Quinn, promise me, Eleanor. I need to know you will be all right." Eleanor wanted to protest that she would never be all right without him, but she saw the need in his eyes. He needed this reassurance, needed to know she would continue. "I promise," she whispered. Quinn closed his eyes, a peaceful expression settling over his face. "I love you, Eleanor Navarro. Thank you for the most beautiful life a man could ask for." "I love you too," Eleanor said, her voice breaking. "More than words can ever say." He slipped away quietly as the sun rose, his hand still in hers, a slight smile on his lips. Eleanor sat with him for a long time, memorizing his face one last time, saying her goodbyes to the man who had been her entire world for over 4 decades. The funeral was well attended, the entire town turning out to pay respects to Quinn Navarro, the reformed outlaw who had become one of their own. Person after person came forward with stories of Quinn's kindness, his generosity, his skill. The young man who had fixed their roof for free. The widow whose broken furniture he had repaired without charge. The children he had made toys for every Christmas. He was a good man, Sheriff Benson, now 93 and frail, said at the service. Made some mistakes when he was young, but he spent the rest of his life making up for them. That is all any of us can do. Thomas gave the eulogy, his voice steady despite the tears on his cheeks. "My father taught me that it is never too late to change, to be better, to choose love over anger. He showed me that a man is not defined by his worst moments, but by how he responds to them. And he loved my mother with a devotion that inspired everyone who knew them. They were proof that true love exists, that it endures, that it transforms." Eleanor sat in the front row, dry-eyed and composed, though inside she felt shattered. She had known this day would come eventually, had tried to prepare herself for it. But there was no preparing for the loss of your soul mate, the person who had been your partner through everything. At the graveside, as they lowered Quinn into the ground, Eleanor placed a single rose on the coffin, a rose from the bushes he had planted for her decades ago. "Until we meet again, my love," she whispered. The days after were the hardest. Eleanor would wake up reaching for Quinn, forgetting for a moment that he was gone. She would start to tell him something, then remember he was not there to hear it. The house felt too big, too empty, too quiet without his presence. But she had made him a promise, and Eleanor Navarro always kept her promises. She picked up her paintbrush and returned to her easel. At first, she could only paint Quinn, working from memory to create portrait after portrait of the man she had loved. Quinn smiling. Quinn building their cabin. Quinn holding baby Thomas. Quinn with his grandchildren. Each painting was a love letter, a way of keeping him alive in her heart and mind. Eventually, she began to paint other things again. She painted the valley in California where they had been so happy. She painted the canyon where they had first fallen in love. She painted Aztec, the town that had given them a second chance. And she painted love itself, in all its forms. The love between parent and child, between grandparent and grandchild, between partners who had chosen each other against all odds. Her later work was considered her best, infused with a depth of emotion that came from a lifetime of love and loss. Critics from Santa Fe, and even as far as New York, came to see the work of Eleanor Navarro, the self-taught artist who painted with such profound feeling. She sold pieces for good money now, more than she and Quinn had ever dreamed of, but she did not care about the money. She painted because Quinn had asked her to, because it kept her connected to him, because it was what she knew how to do. Thomas worried about her, visiting every day to make sure she was eating and taking care of herself. But Eleanor reassured him. "I am all right," she would say. "I miss him terribly, but I am all right. We had something so beautiful, Thomas. I would rather have that and lose it than never have had it at all." The grandchildren brought her joy. They would come for visits, and Eleanor would tell them stories about their grandfather, keeping his memory alive for the younger ones who had barely known him. She showed them the wooden ring he had carved, now worn smooth from decades of wear. She showed them his carpentry tools, the furniture he had built, the love he had put into every piece. "Your grandfather was an outlaw once," she would tell them, seeing their eyes widen with excitement. "But that is not what made him special. What made him special was his capacity to love, to change, to build something beautiful from a broken past. Remember that. We all make mistakes, but we all have the power to choose better." Eleanor lived for 8 more years after Quinn's passing, 8 years of painting and loving her family and keeping Quinn's memory alive. She never remarried, never even considered it. She had had her great love, and that was enough. On a spring morning in 1934, 79-year-old Eleanor Navarro passed away peacefully in her sleep, a smile on her face and a half-finished painting of Quinn on her easel. Thomas found her there, looking more at peace than she had since Quinn had died. They buried her beside Quinn under the oak tree she had always loved. On her headstone, Thomas had inscribed the words she had said so many times: "No regrets, only gratitude." The double funeral brought the entire town out once more, this time to celebrate a love story that had spanned over half a century. People spoke of Eleanor and Quinn as if they were legend, the artist and the outlaw who had defied all odds to build a life together. "They were extraordinary," someone said. "No," Thomas corrected gently. "They were ordinary people who loved each other extraordinarily well. That is what made them special." In her will, Eleanor left her paintings to her family, with instructions that they be passed down through the generations. She wanted her descendants to remember that love was worth fighting for, worth waiting for, worth everything. She wanted them to know that second chances existed, that people could change, that beauty could be found even in the hardest circumstances. Years later, Thomas's daughter, young Eleanor Rose, now a woman with children of her own, discovered a trunk in the attic of the old house. Inside were dozens of paintings her grandmother had never sold or displayed, all of them portraits of Quinn. There he was at every age and every mood, captured with such love and skill that he seemed almost alive. But it was the painting at the bottom of the trunk that made Eleanor Rose cry. It showed a younger Eleanor and Quinn, standing at the edge of a canyon as the sun set behind them. They were holding hands, looking at each other with such profound love that it seemed to radiate from the canvas. On the back, in her grandmother's handwriting, was a simple inscription: "The day I knew, July 1882, when a wanted man asked for his portrait and stole my heart instead. All my love forever. E.N." Eleanor Rose carefully restored the painting and hung it in her home, where it remained for generations, a testament to a love that had conquered all obstacles. The story of Eleanor and Quinn Navarro became family legend, told and retold to each new generation, a reminder that true love existed, that it was worth any sacrifice, and that it could transform not just 2 lives but countless others. The old wooden ring Quinn had carved sat in a place of honor in a glass case, beside Eleanor's diamond ring, and the first sketch she had ever drawn of him, the one from that fateful day in Sheriff Benson's office. These artifacts told a story more powerful than any words could convey. A story of love, redemption, courage, and the transformative power of seeing someone truly, completely, for who they really were. And sometimes, on spring evenings when the light was just right, people walking past the old Navarro house swore they could see 2 figures sitting on the porch, holding hands and watching the sunset together. Forever young, forever in love, forever home.